Welcome to Face Islam, a program dealing with the subject of Islam in today's world, the reality of what's going on for Muslims everywhere. And in today's program, we want to talk about the subject of Hadith. What is this word, Hadith? And is it something that I, as a Muslim, have to adhere to or follow today? Is it something that's optional? Or is it something even reliable? Well, let's find out. Let's begin with the word itself. Hadith literally means stories or narrations that come to us in oral format. But it could be written down. But usually, at the time of Muhammad, peace be upon him, somebody had a hadith. They were talking, not writing. And again, like I said, some people did write them down. For the most part, though, everything, Quran and what they observed from Muhammad, peace be upon him, was all transmitted orally. Hadith, stories, narrations. Got it? All right, next. Some people think the Quran is the only thing preserved, and therefore they reject anything other than the Quran. Well, this is a big mistake, and may Allah guide all of us to stay away from mistakes, because we know in Islam that فَإِنَّ أَصْدَقَ الْحَدِيثِ كِتَابُ اللَّهِ. The Quran itself is a hadith, a collection of sayings of Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, heard all of this Quran from the angel Gabriel over a period of 23 years. And then he communicated it to his followers, and they also communicated it on to their followers and next generations. So that is how the Quran came. These same exact people also narrated the stories and explanations of Quran by what Muhammad, peace be upon him, said and did. So the Quran is the speech of Allah, and the way of Muhammad, or his biography, his seerah, explains the Quran. The wife of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, told us, if you want to see the Quran walking, look to Muhammad. He is the walking Quran. You want to understand what the Quran means, look at him. But how can we do that if we don't have the hadith? And these hadith were also, as we said, passed down by the very same people that memorized and passed down the Quran. Likewise, they were all collected by various collectors of hadith, and then these were committed to paper, written down on different formats and different substances, and then these were preserved, and we still have them today. As a matter of fact, very, very old, very, very valuable, but they're still there. We still have it. Now, and by the way, I have personally seen some of these in my travels, so it's not something somebody said, we know it exists. We want to continue this, talking about the importance of hadith. There are many things in the Quran that could be interpreted different ways if we don't have the hadith to clarify. In one of our programs, we spoke about the white thread and the black thread that need to be observed before you start fasting in the morning in Ramadan. Then we found out that it's actually the white thread of dawn against the black thread of night. There are some others as well. The 5 times daily prayer is not actually mentioned by number in the Quran. Salawatul Khams is not there. This is in hadith. That's why we need hadith. We need to know about these prayers or the connection or salah with Allah. And we need to know when to do it. Not just how many, but when do we do it? And we learn this from the hadith. Our direction, of course, toward Mecca, but how do we achieve that when we're so far around the world? Some things in hadith talking about that. What do we do when the sun doesn't set? Well, this is mentioned in hadith. There'll be a time when the Muslims will be in a place where the sun doesn't set for days and days and days. And then other times when it doesn't come up for days and days and days. And this was not talking about the end of the world or something. It was talking about what? And we find Muslims today in Tromsø, Norway, for instance, or the very far south of Australia, where sometimes you don't see the sun really get all the way up to where you can see it for days in the winter, and then days in the summer where it doesn't really even go down all the way. So that is how we are understanding this, the explanation coming to us from these hadith. And what would we do if we didn't have the hadith? So that, a number of other obligatory things that we do, but also in general, the hadith are telling us how to behave and how not to misbehave, the way we should treat others that are Muslims and non-Muslims, and give good service to all people. And he was the example of that, not just by word, but his deed. And his life is the most talked about life on this planet. No other human being has the distinction of having so much being written about him, being said about him. He's talked about in all societies around the planet, whether good or bad. He is the most talked about person, and more people are named Muhammad today than any other single name. So it's important for us to know who is Muhammad and what are these hadith or stories about him. And that is faith, Islam. La 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 la.